Welcome to the Decompression Chamber. I am Andrea, your host, and joining us this week is Ryan. How you doing, Ryan?
Great, Andrea. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome. I appreciate you coming on, and a little bit of a departure this week. We're having you on. You're not a veteran exactly, but you were a probation officer, and definitely interested in any sort of civil service type career. But we'll start at the beginning. Uh, where are you from? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, I feel like I'm always like the oddball and like especially for like the podcasting world because a buddy of mine does an EMS podcast and he had me on. So I'm
Okay.
on a military podcast and I fit like you said, it's kind of both,
You're
but
like
yeah, it's
touching on some of the lines of the Venn diagram. Perfect.
exactly. I'm somewhere in the middle of gray area, even in law enforcement's kind of but anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm from I'm from upstate New York. I'm from like the Rochester area.
Okay.
Um Yep. Spent most of my life there, and let's see, I'm 33 now, so I just moved to Texas. Uh,
Nice.
got out of the area. Yeah, it's cold. It's kind of like
That's
Minnesota,
oh God. Well, there's a Rochester, Minnesota, so perhaps a coincidence, perhaps not. Uh,
perhaps.
I've only been to Rochester, actually. I think to visit you right about the time you're getting unloading the house, but that was during a very nice time of year. I was like, oh, this would be pretty cool, but I understand it just gets bitter cold, and I want no part of that.
Yeah, yeah. The cold's a big part of it. But I do miss my house. My house up there is pretty nice.
Yeah, it was
Uh,
awesome house.
but anyway, yeah. So yep, I grew up there. Actually kind of a little bit east of there. It's more of a rural area,
Okay.
basically where I grew up, but I kind of spent a lot of time in the city. Um, every time I say I'm from New York, people assume it's from the city. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, what borough or something, but I did spend a lot of time down there. I think once I started going to college, um, yeah, I got out of high school, started going down there quite a bit because I had friends who went to like Fordham and started living on Long Island.
Okay.
So yeah, it was down there every couple months in my late teens, early 20s, and so got that experience as well.
All right. Cool. And so were you going down to school or going to school down in the city too, or you're closer up to upstate? Where'd you go to school?
Oh yeah, so I did consider going to John Jay at one point,
Okay.
uh, but I think that was I mean I went to school at SUNY Brockport,
Okay.
up up near it's a little bit west of Rochester. I went for criminal justice and forensic science
All right.
and graduated in I think 2013. So
All
yeah.
right. Good stuff. So now, how did you? Did everybody always changes their majors throughout college? Did you know what you wanted to study, or kind of open ended the first couple years?
It's I was pretty set on the criminal justice thing. Really, I think I think my junior year in high school. Um, I always kind of like thought about it, but it wasn't really something I was going to get into. I was
Yeah.
really going into more like comedy stuff. Even back then, I was kind of like doing
Hell yeah.
figuring out how I could get into media or something like that. But I think my junior year is when a state trooper did a talk for our class, and he kind of
Oh,
said like,
interesting.
"Hey, you're looking for solid, steady work. That's not the easiest job, but you have job security. Basically,
Yeah.
went through all the training and stuff. That combined with watching Reno 911, that looked really
Yes. Yes. What people think like, oh, why'd you become a cop? Oh, I watch cops, but in your case, it's no Reno 911. That's what did it.
my inspiration. Yeah,
Yeah, that's how you mastered the banter and some of the goofy shit you might see.
yeah. There were times definitely when I was like on the job thinking like, this is like Travis Jr. shit right here. Like this is what I'd be expecting him to do. But
Yeah. Well,
but
I had an uncle who was a deputy, and he said, "I don't. Whoever writes that show has to know cops or has to have been a cop. It's just too
oh,
close."
absolutely, yeah, they did a very very good job. But
That they did.
I guess that's kind of where maybe the two kind of combined there. It's like, the law enforcement and comedy stuff. But I
Sure.
genuinely looked at that, and I knew kind of even back then I didn't want to stay in New York, and
Sure.
police are something that are in every town and major city in the US. So
Yeah.
um yeah, so I started to kind of look at that. Um I
Okay.
guess I didn't oh, sorry. I
Oh,
didn't really think about probation till like much later, I think.
y-
So,
well, yeah, you kind of get like a general track, and then there's probably several different things you could do when it comes to law enforcement or criminal justice. Had you ever given any thought to the military, or what were your thoughts on that?
yeah, so I did consider actually Coast Guard at one point.
Perfect. Well, yeah, you're on a Great Lake, so
Yeah,
makes
perfect.
sense.
Could walk for.
Yeah.
I think the part about that appealed to me was was it still the law enforcement aspect of it,
Very true.
I've seen the videos of some of those guys like jumping onto like submarine, like moving submarines. I don't know if
Dude,
that's
that video was crazy.
I know,
Yeah,
right? Oh my God.
nuts. Just knock knock. Anyone
Balls
home?
fast. Yeah.
Yeah. That was
Can't-
that was badass. Well, and I mean, shout out to the boot company. Like, how do you maintain traction on a wet submarine?
Exactly. God,
Pretty
what
impressive.
do they wear there? Are they baits or what?
I can't yeah, it can't be issued gear. It's gotta be some aftermarket shit that the guy bought for himself. But
Yeah, yeah. Awesome.
yeah,
But
cool.
I guess I don't really know why I guess I was just more I guess I kind of really just geared more towards the law enforcement part of things,
Yeah.
uh, ultimately, and yeah, ended up later on kind of going into the probation thing just because it was like it was towards the end of I'd worked different jobs I think after I got out of college.
Mhm.
I worked like security for like a big corporation, and I did like executive like stuff and transported people.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Yeah, there's people don't realize like corporate security's really a good industry. People don't really think about it. So, now,
yeah.
uh, were you doing that? Some of that stuff, like you were doing that before becoming a probation officer. I just want to make
Mhm.
sure I have the timeline. Oh, okay. And how long did you do that for? Was that like right out of school or?
Mm, um, actually, it was yeah, it was when I was still going to school. I
Oh,
started
wow.
working at,
Internship.
yeah, well, no, my internship was really cool actually in college.
Oh yeah.
I was with a criminal investigation division of like a county sheriff's office.
Oh,
So
neat.
yeah, I kind of worked security gigs for a lot of my time during and after college, and um, I think that's kind of where I started to kind of maybe veer away from like the law enforcement thing. I'm like, I don't know if I really want to do this anymore. Like,
Oh yeah.
because I worked with a bunch of retired cops who were just constantly saying, "Don't do it."
Oh yeah. Yeah, the people who have been there, done that, they're probably going to try and talk you out of it. Otherwise, they would probably still be doing it if they're at all able-bodied. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just everything I see today, it seems like such a thankless job to be a cop. But,
Mhm.
at this point, if you're hearing about this like during your internship and whatever else, like you've already got so much time invested.
Right. I'm like, what do they know?
Oh,
I got
okay, you were in denial at first. Yeah, it's like stages of grief.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And like, I'm going to be different. I never once thought, I think the one thing that did do for me though is like make me go into it not thinking, hey, I'm going to make a difference and like change, everything and save the world. I never ever went into it like that.
Wow. Good for
So
you.
that's, yeah, I would have
It's
not made it very far.
yeah, tough
Uh,
to do at any age, but especially when you're still college age. Like that's that's where they make colleges I think are put on earth to make young people delusional. So, that you're
yeah.
able to resist that level of indoctrination is laudable. It's amazing actually.
Thank you. Yeah. I think I did an all right job. Uh, but yeah, when you said they weren't physically fit anymore to do that job, you're not kidding. Like
Oh yeah.
some of these retired guys, just like the one guy, he's my former supervisor. He's just there in chain smoke all day. You guys,
Hell
you've
yeah.
got these reports, right? Like you're your own worst enemies out here. You can just tell, like he was just.
Yeah.
grizzly top.
Oh
Uh,
god. Yeah, you saw that in the military a lot too. Is like especially the enlisted ranks, they hit E7, they would just balloon up and get fat. And it's like
yeah,
almost without fail. It's like there were very few fit chiefs that you saw. It's just like I guess once you get, however many years in, you just don't give a shit anymore and you don't have to be up to standards. So I
yeah.
take it that sheriff's office didn't have to run too many physical fitness assessments.
Well, I mean, the for the internship, yeah, hit and miss. Some of those guys were real old school.
Oh
They
yeah.
still carried like an ankle piece and everything, and he wore like these thick Coke bottle glasses. I don't know. I just I like to think of the characters these guys were, but
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like you're describing one of the trailer park boys with the Coke bottle glasses.
yeah, yeah, kinda, a little bit, yeah. Uh, but anyway, I think, yeah, I think I got a very early exposure just in college through internships and working security, and doing
Good.
all these things. I I really got a very full and accurate picture of what police work was like before I, ever um I was taking tests during those times too, and a couple of them I got offered, but it was like corrections here and there, and I really didn't want to work in a
Uh,
prison.
oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's a
you know,
whole other animal.
yeah, yeah. Uh, and actually, not to keep just kind of going here, but I remember in high school they had criminal justice students go to Scared Straight with like the kids that were getting
Oh,
into trouble.
damn.
Yeah,
That's
so
quite the
I got
mix. Did you get
picked.
to do that, or that was kind of after your time?
No, no, I went.
Oh yeah.
That
Oh,
was
that's
something.
awesome.
Yeah,
But were you scared straight? I mean, obviously not. You became a parole officer. I mean, you couldn't have been too
yeah.
deterred.
Well, I think they wanted to they just wanted to give you an idea of the people you'd be working with on a
Fair
day in
enough.
basis. And honestly, like the guards at that place were probably some of the scarier people we encountered because they were
Oh
like
yeah. I
no joke.
That's your I mean, in terms of use of force, like that's your first thing is presence. Are you a scary motherfucker? If you are, all right. Well, you've got box 1 covered very well, and then you've got your subsequent ones, voice commands, soft control, all that crap. But
Sure, yeah, you have a good command presence. That's the main thing, and uh, there's different styles of that, I suppose, on the job. But
yeah.
uh, um, some people really, really have it very well, and I like it when I think I remember one of my college professors actually talking about how he had a 20-year career with a police department and never had a resisting arrest. And I thought that was very interesting. And it
Wow.
wasn't out of him not making arrests. He
Yeah.
was just very, very good at persuading people and talking to people. Um, and I always found that really fascinating and
Yeah.
kind of influenced me big time in my style of work and how I did it. I did have resisting arrests, but I
Well,
wasn't as good as
but learning some of his tricks of the trade, you probably reduced what your number significantly. Um,
probably. Yeah.
yeah. Hey, any little bit of knowledge you can put in your toolbox is a good thing. So, how do you get acquainted with the work of a parole officer, and how do you decide that's the route you want to go now that you've got your education?
Yeah. So I think we did have some probation officers come in, and they did like a presentation about what they do, and
Hmm.
uh, I honestly don't remember a whole lot. I remember the one guy saying, I, remember, I, I guess this is the part that stuck out to me. He and I think he later on he was one of my instructors
Oh
when I
yeah.
went like the fundamentals for probation.
Hmm.
He went out there. He said the system does not work. Nothing works. And this big tangent about like how broken everything is.
Oh
And
great, what a guy.
again, realism. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, lots to be said for that. It's you don't want. Yeah, I mean, what are they supposed to do? They're not trained in sales. They're not there for a sales pitch. Might as well
yeah.
be honest about it.
Hmm.
But Okay, but you decide that's the route you want to go, and so post graduation, how do you get into that?
Uh, so it's took civil service exams, studied for them as best I could. I had some relatives that were on probation at different times, so
You put them down as references.
yeah, not so much. But they they kind of talk about like I'd hear like what their probation officer expects and what they do, and I'd get sort of an idea what was going on. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, and then ultimately I got the call, and they offered me a position in their investigation unit there, which is a little bit different than the traditional like supervision role of a probation officer.
Okay, yeah, because that would definitely be what I thought of. So, what do you do with investigations?
So it's anybody that at least in New York, anybody that gets like arrested for a felony,
Hmm.
um, the court typically orders a what's called like a pre-sentence or pre-plea investigation.
Right.
So, they could be, it could be anything from they can order it for misdemeanors too, but
Hmm.
most felonies they order an investigation through the court, and what that does is basically it gives the court an idea of what was going on around the offense, like what happened, who the victims are, what they suffered,
Hmm.
the arresting officer, did they give them any trouble? So, yeah, I would have to go to jails. I'd have
Hmm.
people that were released on their own recognizance come to my office and sit with me, and we talk about what they did. Worked a few murder cases here and
Oh wow.
there. Um, yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of serious crimes in there, but I also
Oh
worked
sure.
some supervision, adult supervision, felony supervision,
Okay.
and did the field work too, and everybody gets trained the same, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you? Well, I guess that kind of would defeat the purpose of probation. But did you have any frequent flyers, or it was kind of a one and done deal?
Mm, there were, like, entire families that we just knew that were like, oh god. We'd see
I
somebody coming in.
I got I got a friend who's a court officer, and he's got a joke about that. He's like, it's good to see families doing things together.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Oh my god, that dark sense of humor definitely comes into play.
I would have to imagine. Yeah, that's pretty sad to be seeing. You have to do something to kind of, you know, gotta have
Uh,
gallows humor. Anything in civil service seems like.
yeah, yeah, but there were people, I worked, as a PO for, 6 years, and there were people that I interviewed probably 3, 4 times in that amount of time, so just
Wow.
different arrests over and over again for most of the time the same stuff,
I mean, were there any where it's like, oh, this crime is worse around? You've graduated, like you're progressing, not the direction I want you to go in, but Mazel
yeah,
tov.
yeah, 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 occasionally, yeah, there'd be some where they did escalate. Um, a lot of them it was like they kinda stuck with their crime, you
Okay,
know?
were specialists.
Yeah,
Okay.
specialized in DUI, uh, and majored in DUI and,
Yeah.
you know, petty larceny, all that shit. But anyway, it was just like, uh, yeah, so I definitely got used to people. Then they'd come into my office, they're like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "Great, great.
Yeah, not good to see ya, I guess.
Glad it worked."
Wow. That's that's wild. Okay, so investigations, did supervisions, um any now it and that's, of course the probation office. I'm just kind of trying to figure this out. So, now as a probation officer, are you with the sheriff's department, city police? How much do you interface with other law enforcement?
We work with them quite often,
Mhm.
but it was, basically, uh, it's a separate entire department, and I think by law it has to be than the sheriff's office or the police department. even though they're still state peace officers. Technically, it's like a state position almost, even though it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of confusing because they get their authority from the state,
Okay. Yeah.
uh, and then the department can scale back however they'd like. Because basically, when you're a peace officer, like you could do everything a cop does. However, the uh, the departments scale back. Like we don't do traffic stops. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? That
Right.
wasn't a duty. Thank God. Uh,
Yeah. Those could be
but
hairy.
but if they wanted to, our director could have said, "Yeah, I want you guys to start pulling people over." And thank God that never happened. But you get the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. And then this is probably a dumb question, but I mean, probation and parole are different. So you were strictly probation or dealt with both? How does that work?
Right. Yeah. So we would so probation is like uh post like incarceration or pre incarceration. So say somebody,
Right.
yeah, anybody that's not going to state prison, basically,
Mm-hmm.
uh, we would still deal with them, especially me as an investigator.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I there were cases where it's like the crime they committed, they've pled guilty, and the only thing that under state law, the sentence can only be incarceration
Mm-hmm.
for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas like parole, they deal with people once they're released from prison, help them like reacclimate.
Okay.
Allegedly.
Yeah, it's a lot more involved. So like parole is kind of assuming like they need the tools to stay out of jail, whereas like probation's more assuming like they could probably stay out of jail, like or stay out of prison,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
idea.
It used to be different. Probation used to be for more minor offenses,
Mm-hmm.
especially in its early days. It was really a juvenile kind of aim at the beginning, and then
Okay. Yeah, yeah, because it's kind of almost like an earlier intervention type
yeah.
option.
Mhm.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I suppose knowing the history of it makes probably shine a little more light on it. When about when did that change? Are we talking early like 1800s or early like before we were born?
Yeah, it did. Oh, yeah, it was long before. I think when you're talking about like modern day probation, I'd say probably the '60s is when it started to turn into kind of what it is now.
Okay.
Uh, Even though it was still pretty vastly different, I think it was still those more major crimes started to be put on probation, um, as opposed to like public drunkenness or something like that. It started to be assaults,
Yeah.
rapes,
Oh,
uh,
jeez.
less often, but nowadays, you know, I depending on the degree, uh,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't surprise me at all to see somebody convicted of a rape third or something.
Holy cow.
Yeah, that's New York,
I,
but a little different in Texas, I think.
yeah, I would think Texas is a lot different. Yeah, New York keeps wanting to just downgrade the severity of crimes. Um, and yeah, that's a whole other issue. But yeah, you bring up Texas now. You just moved down there. You're obviously getting settled in. Love the new studio setup that you've got there.
Thanks.
Awesome. And what are you doing now that you're in Texas?
Now now for something completely different. I'm
Love it.
doing I've actually if you ever seen I kind of got my hands in a couple of pots right now, but I'm
Oh, that's
trying to
good.
get more into like the media stuff because I think you and I first connected, through different comedy acts that we know, and
Exactly.
started to. I think you started stand up long before I did, and I have been to a couple open mics at this point, and came down here to the new kind of stand up mecca,
Yes.
as it
Austin
were.
is yeah, Texas is happening. Yeah.
Yeah, so did went to a couple dates up in Rochester and or dates. I guess that's not the right term. Open mics, I should say.
Yeah.
And down here, I'm gonna kind of kind of get my name known, I guess, and start going to more of these.
That's
And
great.
yeah, um, but my experience as a PO, I think, has given me quite a bit of material.
Has to. Yeah, if it didn't, you weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
Now, was it to make the switch? Was it more of like the work of a probation officer pushing you out of that role, or is it more media and entertainment drawing you in?
Hmm. I'd say I like the job itself. I really loved. It
Good.
was especially like the first couple years. I think I got like the tail end of like again, I'm not getting political at all, but after 2020, things certainly changed in law enforcement.
Oh yeah.
Um, Literally, I think in like right before everything shut down for COVID, we had done a bunch of like use of force trainings and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And then, obviously towards the end of COVID, everything's different. We had to just completely relearn so many things. And there's all these new trainings that came out.
Yeah.
Um, some good, some bad, depending on who you ask. But
Sure.
I think everyone would agree the job just got a lot more complicated and
Yeah.
just eh, the risk, I think, too, of doing the job, became greater for everybody.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's a huge consideration. I mean, changes are fine, but you kind of have this idea, and well, more than an idea, but you know essentially what you're getting into if you're going to become a probation officer. Because, like you mentioned, you have to take the civil service exam. You had to have gotten your, your degree probably helped you land the job. You kind of know you've looked into it, you've explored it, and you have some idea of what it entails, and that you're up to the job and you want to go for it. So when it's just radically changed from everything that you ever expected, ever trained for, well, it's a completely different job at that point. Do you want to
In
stick
some
around?
ways, yeah, yeah, and just, um, like I said, the big thing was, like, just like what happens if something goes wrong, I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying, like, cops are always right or probation officers are always right because 'cause they're not. I would never suggest that, but,
Yeah.
there is the possibility today that you could be doing something exactly the way you were trained,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and have somebody, videotape it, and still it would not it would not look good, and your life would be over, essentially.
Oh yeah.
Um, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
The whatever's the phrase is, it's better to be tried by 12 than to be carried by 6. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, but you're not tried by 12 anymore. You're tried by the
The
media
media,
that's going to
yeah.
take some viral clip and run your name through the mud. And well, it's not, legal action being taken against you. Let's say, say you're cleared of all charges. It's just kind of like you look at some of these names, it's like, is this guy working anywhere ever again? Like,
Nope.
does this person have a life? Better go learn to be a farmer or something. Go live
Yeah,
off the
yeah.
land in Alaska.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that and ultimately, that was a big part of me leaving, I think, but, also, the other thing was, like, I'd see people, retiring, and I think maybe you'll be able to relate to this too,
Mm.
people leaving the work and, like, the kind of, like, state they were in towards the end of their career,
Oh, yeah.
uh, what that does to people. So, that,
Oh, for sure.
a lot of them just looked 10, 20 years older than they actually were, and I just saw it, go bad in a few ways, so.
Yeah, it's best to make the shift while you're still a young guy, and you've got other interests and other areas that you can jump into. Um, so all right, you're doing the open mic thing, and hopefully start landing some spots. What are some other things that you're up to media wise? I mean, you got a whole studio set up. You got some plans.
Yeah, I have a couple things kinda in the works. I think you and I have talked about doing some
Yeah,
kinda project, and I think we should.
definitely.
I I really I think I fall more into, like, the production end of things. I've done work for, a lot of different people and just, like, made just funny little short clips, shows back in Rochester even. I did some
Yeah,
stuff, and kinda got my name around that way too, but that's kinda why I chose, like, Austin. I don't care if people know I'm in Austin, whatever.
yeah.
Um, there's a lot of media and creative people here,
Hmm.
and, that's kinda why I chose this spot, so I'm starting to make some inroads there, and
Yeah.
hoping that goes somewhere.
Well, yeah, and you've always done great work. I think your Photoshop of remaking the TV guide with the faces of Anthony Cumia, Dave Landau, and Pat Dixon has to be one
Yeah,
of my favorite Photoshops of all time. And
yeah, yeah.
uh, NTSB Anthony Cumia is my desktop background. I have no plans to change it
Nice.
anytime soon. Makes
That's
me
flatters.
yeah, makes me laugh. Your Photoshop of Jim Norton for mayor, I got him to sign that. That's a very prized possession.
Wow, no kidding. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, and yeah, you do, and of course you did the logo for my podcast. So you do a lot of great work with graphic design. I love your stuff. Is there anywhere that people could check that out, or they just gotta kind of hit you up on the social medias?
Yeah, I'm still getting that all kind of worked out too.
Fair enough.
I have I have kind of like a very, very new Twitter page just for doing stand-up appearances and things like that. So it's just Ryan August Comic at Ryan August Comic, I believe. Make sure. Yeah, it is. Uh,
Okay. Well, yeah, and
so
I'll put it in the link in the description too, so people can find you.
yeah, yeah. So but yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to down here. And I gotta say, Texas people are amazingly friendly. I cannot believe how nice people are down here.
Oh,
Uh,
that's great. Certainly a far cry from New York City.
yeah.
I had some woman stop me in the subway today. Actually, I had two people try and stop at different times. I was coming out of Grand Central. I'm walking to work. Some old lady asked me like how to get to. I think either she wanted to get to Times Square, so either the 7 or the shuttle. And I realized like as she's like trying to flag people down, and she's like desperately trying to get someone to stop. Nobody's stopping. Everybody's going. It's rush hour. And I realized
Mhm.
like okay, she's not a threat. She needs help. Like I'll walk with her and point her in the right direction. Get her day on the way. It was fine. Then later on, I was hopping on the 7 train, and some different type of gentleman, probably a different disposition, came up and asked me which way was north, and I was like, "Hell no,
Right.
not can't
Point a
help."
direction and run the other.
Yes, exactly. Get the hell out of there. Just turn around
Yeah.
and run. Who cares if it's a subway platform?
I
Yeah,
mean, you've probably seen the change in New York, not just New York City, but like the state in the
yeah.
last couple of years more than I think most people would, especially upstaters,
Well,
because it's changed up here, but down there it's like, wow.
yeah. Well, I caught like the tail end of New York City being nice,
Wow,
and
yeah.
and then it was like once COVID hit, then it just everything went to shit. It's just
Mhm.
crazy. Um, ridership on the subway just plummeted, but crime like either held steady or went up. It's like, well,
Yeah.
that sounds bad.
Now is that like the guy, that incident you just mentioned, is that like something you're just kind of used to now? Is that just like, oh, you kind of just your sixth senses just work a little better because it's so frequent now, or is it uh,
um,
not as often as people say that kind of thing? Getting accosted.
I yeah, I never take chances.
Yeah.
Um, I'll rely on my sixth sense. Where it's like, is this person really in need? I mean, obviously, if they are, I'll stop and help. Or if I start getting punched directly in the face, are there enough people around to maybe stop me from getting my head kicked in?
Hmm.
That type of thing. Um, but yeah, for the most part, it's like, if it's a little old lady or something like that, yeah, obviously help them out, point her in the right direction type deal. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, younger, able-bodied people, it's like you have an app, you guaranteed you
Right.
have a smartphone in your pocket, and you're gonna communicate better with that thing than with me.
Right.
So I'm a mark. There's something that you want from me, and
Yeah.
they're gonna what I'm saying is they're gonna get themselves put on probation and go see someone like you. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Probably not anymore, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. They'll just be let out, maybe summons to report or whatever the hell it is. I'm sure they'll
Yeah.
ignore.
It's yeah, it's definitely a different world now, and that's kind of what I was saying before. Like the sentences I used to say, like the only people that like were still getting incarceration were sex offenders.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and towards the end of my career, even those people were just getting like very lenient sentences. And I'm like, "Oof,
Yeah.
for a change."
Well, and it's funny too because the big thing talk about broken windows policing and people don't really understand how that works.
Right.
And I think it's because we don't really understand the mind of a criminal. And I just read an article. There was a guy, he got sentenced to like 2.5 decades for a rape.
Hmm.
And he raped woman on the subway a year or two ago, got away. And I don't think there was any camera recordings, anything else, but like she called, reported the rape right away, gave a great description of the guy.
Hmm.
First of all, he doesn't change his clothes. Second of all, he hops a turnstile, and just unrelated, the cops are like, and you hop turnstile, let's see some ID, whatever else. And then they realize, hey, he looks like this guy that just raped someone.
Don't I
Not,
know you?
yeah. And like for you and me, if we were, did something really egregious that would send us to jail for a long time, not that we would rape someone, but we might carry a kilo of cocaine. We're not perfect.
Who hasn't been there? I
Yeah.
mean,
But like the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I swipe through the turnstile. Something.
right,
Just so I'm not there's no reason for me to be stopped, questioned, whatever else.
right.
And like that's just that he hopped the turnstile is just like doesn't compute to me. It's like 404 error. I'm like, why would you do that? Now you're in
Right.
prison for 2.5 decades, you moron.
Just maybe just the attitude though. Maybe it's just completely like just blatant. Like I'm not going to get in trouble for anything. Which
Yeah.
2.5 decades, pretty good, especially for New York City. I mean, I got to say,
Yeah, I'm like, did he like cut her leg off? Like, what else? It was
right.
just like I'm so cynical now. I'm like, wait, it was just a rape. Like, it's still egregious, but yeah, you think with New York City, there's got to be something else involved with the
Yeah,
crime.
it could be. It could be maybe he was like a second felony offender or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, it
Which
could be.
the second felony offender does not necessarily mean you've committed two felonies. Like it has to
Oh,
be a felony within a certain amount of time and a certain felony. And there's all sorts of different categories. It'll twist your brain up in pretzels when you're trying to like read the statute and understand how it all works.
ah,
But basically, there's a bunch of things that have to line up for you to basically be like second felony. There's like a second violent felony offender and all these other different categories. But
oh.
um,
Well, then I'll
well,
abandon all hope of ever reading and understanding that law.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
avoid it
it's
altogether. Pay a really good lawyer if I get in trouble. Um,
yeah,
well, yeah, definitely New York City's deteriorated, but I guess either I didn't know that much about Rochester or it's gone through its own negative changes over the years because I just hear about all sorts of crazy crime and like, didn't some guy with a hood die naked in the winter and then like the mayor's a nut bar? I mean, Rochester just like exploded in the last couple of years.
yeah, yeah. They definitely had their own. It was that was the Daniel Prude case. I think you're talking about. Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
yeah, that was that had happened. I think that had happened before the George Floyd incident happened,
Yes. Yes, I
and
remember that.
there was like the mayor's office like knew what had happened, and I've heard all sorts of things about that case and what actually happened. For like
Hmm.
the EMTs were at fault. I've heard that
Yeah.
that he was there was all sorts of like crazy rumors flying around by people who are like either on the force or things like that. Um, and you're right though, it was just a similar incident that kind of caused Rochester to essentially like melt down. I think right around the time that I think when you came to visit that one time,
Hmm.
was that 2020? I think it was.
Uh,
Yeah,
it was
might have
right
been,
as you were selling your house. So,
yeah, yeah. So I think that might have been never mind, it might have been 21. But I just remember like living in the city at that time. It was like it's just you heard the noise level increase.
oh, I bet. Yeah, a
And
lot of unrest for sure.
yeah. Um but yeah, I guess I wouldn't know what to say specifically about that case. Just like you said though, it did kind of change specifically crime in Rochester, and now um, in some way or another, it has affected like the homicide rate there, which has like doubled
Yeah. Oh my
that
God.
year.
That's
Like it went from I think 50 or 60 maybe to like 80, almost 90, I think, in 2021.
that's
Um,
yeah, that's just crazy. Cuz what's the population of Rochester?
I think it's I could be wrong here. I think it's a little over million two, something like that.
Oh, it's that big.
Whole
Okay.
general Monroe County area, I think they include, but um, yeah. So it's basically like Austin, Texas has a similar. I think might be
Okay.
more here, but
Mhm.
I think it was like half that here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Which
40
yeah, and
here.
you hear about all the problems of coming out of Austin and everything else, but yeah, Rochester, I was just always blown away by how many violent crimes were coming out of there. It was like, wasn't this supposed to be kind of a nice area? And like I went to your house, I went to another friend's house up there on my little excursion. It's like, it seems kind of nice. Where the hell is all this stuff popping off?
Yeah, it's mostly downtown, but I mean there
Of
are nice
course.
spots for sure, and it's a shame that sometimes it does spill out into like yeah, areas where people are just trying to live their lives. There's been a lot of carjackings in Rochester.
Oh, I
Um,
know. Yeah,
uh,
just crazy.
um, Lots of stuff like that. Lots more high speed chases and things like through the city. Like,
Ah, how quaint.
yeah, it's cute.
Jeez Louise. Well, yeah, it's really sad state of affairs. Hopefully, states like Texas and Florida are kind of have their stuff together and show some sort of a blueprint for how to, not screw up in the first place or to unfuck oneself if you do screw up. Um,
Yeah, it
yeah,
seems that way, at least here with Greg Abbott. I mean, he kind of he did. I guess people were saying like crime was out of control in Austin. I got down to him like, what the hell? Everything's fine. What's the problem?
yeah. Well, I mean, maybe by Austin standards, it's like, well, I don't know, put Charles Whitman up in the clock tower.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, don't do that.
yeah,
But
that'd be
supposedly
terrible.
there's a serial killer running around down here.
Huh.
Like that's what they. I think it's nonsense, but there's like all these guys like in their uh like early 30s that kind of look like me that are getting found dead in the lake.
Really?
Yeah,
That's that's surprising. Well, you should dye your hair or get fat or do something to protect yourself. Don't be a
yeah.
victim.
I'm weighing my options. Yeah, but
Change your gender. That'll save you.
yeah, yeah. Uh, right in here in Austin.
Yeah, it's wouldn't even raise any eyebrows. It'd just get the serial killer off your back. Wow.
Yeah, it's all it's for self-preservation,
Yeah,
people.
safety first. Um,
Exactly.
wow, that's interesting. Yeah, well, I mean, Greg Abbott, he's seems to be doing something right. He won't stand for it. I don't- But
It's
shh.
I've
Worst
heard
worst
people
joke I'll tell all week.
I've heard people openly call him like Wheels.
Too bad his
It's
name doesn't rhyme with something like that. Like,
yeah.
man. Oh well. Um, but yeah, I appreciate you coming on and sharing that stuff. And you did 6 years as a probation officer. If you knew anyone who's looking to go into that kind of work, anything with law enforcement, would you have any advice for them?
I don't want to say just one word, don't. Because
That's that's advice.
yeah, because that's not even would be my advice. I would say just like one thing that I'd say if you're going to go for a position, especially in law enforcement, where uh, you're dead set on that. Okay, that's great, especially if you're younger and you
Hmm.
want to go to college for criminal justice.
Hmm.
Unless that's really your passion, don't do that because you're going to want some other skill when
True.
you get out, and it's not. Uh, it's really not. There are skills that I learned there that I'll have with me forever.
Hmm.
It's something that I'm so like glad I did. I don't regret a second of actually like doing that job. It was amazing. But I really wish I'd like kind of branched into or had something else in my pocket because
Okay.
basically I could have had whatever degree I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, still, yeah, to some extent I could have, if it was somewhat related to social work, but for the
Okay.
most part, um, I could have gotten whatever degree I wanted. Um, but I guess criminal justice is a very cool degree. It's just it better be exactly what you're looking for, and
Your employment options, having obtained that, are pretty one dimensional, is what you're saying.
yeah, unless you get really, really creative, yeah. But and just the other thing is to look after your health. That
Oh
includes
yeah.
like your physical and mental health. My first day on the job, my supervisor told me, he's like, "Do not take this shit home with you. Like, don't
Smart.
think about it. Just walk out the door." And believe me, that is way easier said than done because some days you see and hear the most horrible things you've ever seen,
Yeah.
and you better be prepared for it because I thought I was. And there's like stuff that I can't unsee, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah. I I have a very low stress job now, let's be honest. But if they need to get a hold of me, they can. I do want to see if something's an emergency, so I'll get emails on my phone, when I'm at home. And it's just okay. And it really is like the physical as well as mental connection where it's like when I swipe that email away, it's gone until I
Right.
get back to work on Monday.
Hmm.
If it's an emergency, sure, I'll see what I can do, but it's like, all right, this person saying that they're going to hurt themselves? Nope. All right, well, I'll come to that on Monday. But again, that's easier said than done. Seeing what you saw as a probation officer, that's got to be, you probably don't perfect that even after a 20-year career.
That's again kind of why I left. I didn't want to deal with like 25, 30 years of that.
Oh,
But
God.
what I mean, like obviously you have this podcast here. But like what's something like kind of because you're still kind of actively doing this or like dealing with situations sort of like what I was dealing with because I monitored some people and I had to like y- when you leave you still kind of worry,
Yeah.
like, oh God, what's gonna happen this weekend? Like what am I gonna come into Monday? Um, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what do you do to like kind of like let all that go and like decompress? Are you able to just walk out the door kind of like what you said, or do you like uh
Yeah.
read or listen to comedy or what's your
Oh,
thing?
yeah, comedy all the time. Yeah, I kind of have my daily routine. I mean, I get up early every morning and lift some weights.
Hmm.
Um, so that's huge for my mental health. Just that I'm getting up, moving around, getting everything done before anyone else is probably even awake.
Yeah.
Um, my commute usually is like the worst part of my day. That's the part that pisses me off the
Yeah.
most. But I'm listening to a comedy podcast or reading something interesting, whatever else. So I'm making use of my time. Uh, then highlight of my morning before I actually get started. I don't talk to anyone. No exchange of pleasantries. I make my little French press coffee,
Nice.
and then I'm ready to start my day. And then tidal wave of everything can come through. Lunchtime, listen to some more comedy, eat my little lunch that I packed the night before, and then when I go home, I just turn my brain off, listen to a comedy podcast, come home, get some sleep, and then yeah, the weekends, have other stuff to do. Try and make a plan.
Do you think like the military was helpful in that, just turning it off? Like you kind of mentioned like a
Shock,
switch.
shockingly, probably not.
Really?
Because the military was like a 24/7 job. Like you could be recalled and whatever else. So
Yeah.
the civilian job, where it's like, no, like you're done, go home. It's
Yeah.
like
You're punched out.
this is nice, this is great. So yeah, I don't think that really came until probably even after I got out of the reserves because they were they'd call me for crap during the week or whatever. I don't have to deal with that anymore. It's done. It's over.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, it does take some practice, but you know, it's nice to have a low stress kind of nonprofit Red Cross type job.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine. My little county government was, like, dysfunctional. I'm trying to imagine, like, on the federal level,
Oh my
how
god. Yeah.
dysfunctional occurs.
It's yeah. Well, if you that's the thing, like, because if you there are people who say I want to join the military because I want to serve my country, and like that's a very noble notion, but it's also very naive one. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. And
Yeah.
I tell people about I met this kid. He's a senior in high school. He's going to join the Marine Corps over the summer, and like God bless him. And I was kind of like, all right, and he goes to like a decent school and everything, and he could probably do a lot of different stuff, but he's just
Mhm.
no, I want to serve my country, I kind of want to be a badass and whatever else, and it's like that's really cool, but it's also kind of like meeting a 12-year-old who still believes in Santa Claus. like like it warms your heart with the Christmas spirit, but you're kind of like, you're going to get fucked up so hard, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
still pulling for you.
Opposite of it. I'm gonna save everybody. It's like the 50s. This is
Yeah,
not
yeah.
Adam 12 anymore, dude. Like, this is
Yeah. It's like, well, you'll be cured of that
Dragnet.
soon enough anyway, and then, you'll have a good life experience that none of your other peers will have, so it just will be good in a way that you never thought about. That's
Sure.
all. Yeah.
Imagine Joe Friday getting, like, this bucket of water dumped on his head. Some
Swab that up,
Yeah.
boot.
God.
Yeah. Oh my god, poor kid.
That'd be a funny modern dragnet. That'd be funny.
Yeah, yeah.
Do that.
Yeah. Here I'm having flashbacks to boot camp, like getting stressed out about that. Um but yeah, luckily now in my older years, lower stress life, and it sounds like that's the path that you've chosen, being in Texas and pursuing something that you're passionate about and doesn't come with convicted felons. So,
Well,
well, but they're not actively,
right. They're not my responsibility anymore, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. You don't have to check in with them or
Right.
investigate what they did. So it's
Yeah,
an
get the middle
improvement.
phone
It's a good
calls.
move.
Exactly. Very big improvement. I
Well,
behaved myself for most of this call. I don't want to
oh yeah,
put
yeah.
my sense of humor into this too much because
I
you know.
I hear you. But yeah, I'll definitely for the YouTube version of this, I'll put your Twitter in the description so people can find you for some of the work that you do. Because again, I love the photoshops that you do, and that's only one side of the production work that you put out. Um, and yeah, do you have anything else that you want to plug or promote?
No, I mean, thank you for that. Yeah, I'm on like locals still. I think it's just Ryan August still. I think you just look me up there. But I don't have too much posted on there yet. I plan to eventually in the coming months. So stay
Awesome.
tuned to those. Yep.
Yeah, I'll promote that as well. But yeah, again, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your experiences. Really interesting because obviously, as probably anyone listening, and you discern very quickly, I know jack shit about the legal system, and probation and parole, and
I know jack shit about the military, but I mean,
we made
really,
it work. Yeah,
yeah. And thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. It's an
I
honor to be here.
absolutely. And yeah, have a great rest of your week.